Hey, it's Michelle coming to you with some kitchen inspiration. It's a meatless day today. So it is Wednesday and I'm making a sheet pan meal. So I thought I would share with you. So first thing I got going on is I got my 2-quart saucepan with some veggie broth in it and some quinoa, because that's going to be the base that it goes on. And then I've got my half sheet pan here. I love these. This is the one with the 1-inch side. Okay. A half sheet pan is the largest size we have because it's the size of a half of a sheet cake. Okay. And it's a stainless and aluminum combo that's made out of, which makes it really sturdy and nice, but also makes it not flex and cook well because it doesn't have the reaction that aluminum would normally have with the food. All right, so I grabbed my big giant chef knife out of my block, and I've got this beautiful head of broccoli that I got at the farm yesterday. So the recipe, I'm kind of loosely basing this on a recipe which called for broccolini, but I don't have broccolini, but I have broccoli. So I preheated my oven to 400 degrees. Well, it's working on it. It's only at 250 right now. Since this was supposed to be broccolini, I got this beautiful fresh broccoli. I'm going to make small pieces of fresh broccoli, okay? I'm going to make them a little bit skinnier and smaller so that they cook at the rate the broccolini would have cooked at, if that makes sense to you. All right. This chef knife is amazing. I love it for squashes. This is the time of year I use the chef knife a lot because anytime I get a squash from the farm, butternut or spaghetti or my favorite acorn squash, this one will go right through. Actually, I don't like these big stems. Take them off. You can save those big stems though and use them to make veggie broth, your own veggie broth. They're great for that. You can start a bag in the freezer of all the pieces that you cut off the veggies that you're eating. And then when you've got a full gallon Ziploc, just put them in some water with some salt and boil them up and make your own veggie broth. And then you just either blend it if you like it cloudy, or drain it and you know, toss the veggies or feed them to the dog or something. But it's, or stick them in some soup. You can do that with them too. But you're going to have taken most of the vitamins out of them when you're making your broth. That's a good way to use up leftovers. All right. I guess I'll just use all of this. It's going to take up my whole sheet pan, but that's okay. My family likes broccoli. So we're putting the broccoli in, and then I've got some nice fresh cherry and grape. I got a mixture of cherry and grape tomatoes, also from the farm, and I'm going to put those in. All right. So I'm gonna mix, just gonna drop those on top. Might need more of those. Get some of this stuff out of the way. All right, and then, like I said, I'm deviating from the recipe in a couple of ways. One of them is the ingredients I'm putting on, and the other one is the spices that I'm using. So it said to use a red onion, which I had a third of one in the freezer. Running it under some water. And I'm gonna slice this up and pop it on there. Let me put it on the flat side down. This is a frozen onion. Remember I told you that. So it's onions. This is a tip that you probably, I don't know if you know this or not, but it's one of those tips that I didn't learn till later on when I learned to cook, is that you should never keep a half of an onion in the refrigerator because it goes bad very quickly and it collects bacteria. So whenever I use a half of an onion for something, I put the other half in the freezer. So that way I can use the half an onion later and it's still safe to eat. Okay. All right, next job. I forgot to get my kernel cutter. Get my kernel cutter out. And my can opener. All right, so I've got an ear of corn here. Fresh corn from the farm. That's about a mile away. It's not my farm. I don't have a farm. I just have a garden. All right. Whoa, this has a lot of hair on it today. Do you know that corn silk? This is a cool trick that a cool thing that the farmer taught me. She said that every piece of silk is the food line that goes to each one of these little pieces of corn. Okay. So without all this silk, which I know we think is a nuisance, but without it, you wouldn't actually have any kernels because the silk actually feeds the kernels. And that's how you get kernels. Otherwise, you wouldn't get any. So if you have a piece of corn and it has a bald spot with no kernels, it's probably because the silk got removed or something. Okay, so we're gonna go over here and take my kernel cutter and just shave the corn onto this pan. I know it's almost the end of corn season, which makes me sad because I just love corn. Trying to get the last couple of weeks out of my corn. Of course, then we go into Christmas and the holiday season. I'm sure you guys are starting to think about that. All right, so we're just gonna spread my corn out here. All right, so the last ingredient I'm gonna add before I start spicing this up is I've got a can of chickpeas. And I'll grab my smooth edge can opener. And this is gonna be a pretty high protein meal. Even though it doesn't have any meat in it, it's going to have cheese, quinoa, and chickpeas. So that's a pretty good amount of protein right there. That's why we don't need meat for this. We try to do meatless at least once a week. Usually we do meatless once a week and we do fish once a week. Helps me with my cholesterol. Just better for you in general. I'm gonna use about half of this can. Okay, and now I take some olive oil, drizzle this over here. So we're basically gonna roast these veggies at 400 degrees. I need a couple of utensils. And we're just gonna toss these a little. Make sure they're nice and olive oiled. They might need a little bit more olive oil. Let's see. Spread them out nicely so everything cooks. I'm gonna just give this just a tiny bit more. Okay, now I'm going to use my Pampered Chef black truffle and herb seasoning. And I'm just going to sprinkle this over here. And some salt and pepper. And now comes for the fun part. You ready for the fun part? Of course, I made a giant mess on this cutting board, so I'm gonna get a clean one. That's one of the good things about these little cutting boards is you can use a bunch of them and they still fit in the dishwasher. Okay, so now I've got 2 blocks of feta, really good feta. You know how you know if it's really good feta? If it says sheep or sheep and goat. That's where you get the really good flavor. Just regular goat feta is pretty mild, doesn't have a lot of taste. But if it's sheep and goat, that's where you're gonna get the really good flavor, okay? So sheep and goat or sheep only makes a huge difference. So I'm gonna take these 2 blocks. I'm gonna nestle them in here. Actually, I think I'm gonna cut them down the middle. I'm gonna use that same knife, but I need to rinse it off. So I had corn silk all over it. Give this a cut right there. When you cook feta, it gets this lovely creamy texture. All right, so I'm just gonna nestle it in a couple different spots here, okay? It's fine if the broccoli kind of sits on top of it or whatever. It doesn't make any difference. Not an exact science, right? Put that in. And I'm gonna pop this into the oven at 400 degrees for about 15 to 20 minutes. So the veggies look like they are cooked all the way through. Nice and roasted, and the cheese is starting to look melty. And then I'm going to serve it on top of my quinoa. And that was pretty much it. Super easy, really delicious. Just wanted to share. Thanks for joining me.